Two topics, okay. Okay, right. So I hope you had a good day yesterday and today. This topic is, of course, very, very topical one. So I'm sure most of you will see in the news, this is the hot topic. I don't know whether in India it's a big topic or not, but in the rest of the world, especially in the West, it is very, very big. Climate change is very big. Whether the governments actually implement those policies or not, that's another question. But people who are scientists and a scientific mind, they will realize that this is a serious topic, serious matter. So for an audience like you, I'm sure you will appreciate the importance of this topic. Climate change, of course, encompasses so many things. So many things. So what does climate change? There is a definition. This is an official definition for climate change. So climate change is defined as the long-term shift in the temperature patterns caused by natural or man-made activities caused mainly by the burning of fossil fuels. I don't need to tell you that technology is involved in this. Technology is deeply involved in this. So for an audience like yours, it will be very, very interesting. So there you are. If you are to tackle it, there is so much opportunity there. So straight away, actions to limit climate change. We are diving deep straight into this. We are not going to go into all our theories and all why climate change is happening, but we accept that climate change is there. And climate change is mainly affected by people's activities, human lifestyle. So look at all the different areas of the lifestyle where climate change is, affected. Travel. We're always talking about cars being the biggest polluter at the moment, cars, aeroplanes even, they're talking of banning aeroplanes. How they will do it, I don't know. And even shipping apparently uses a lot of, hydrocarbons as fuel for propelling ships. And then you look at food, how food is produced, how it is consumed, all the processes, and then general living. So it literally encompasses every aspect of life, every aspect of life. And of course, your technology impinges on every single aspect. So can you imagine the wealth of opportunity there is for engineers and technologists to get involved in this? You see energy usage, all these activities. So the opportunities for technological innovation is absolutely vast. Absolutely vast. People don't realize it, but the more you look at it, the more you realize that there is this opportunity. In life, whatever situation there is, you can either look at it in a negative way or positive way. You can throw your hands up in horror and say, oh, what will we do? Are Baba, climate change is going to kill us. But, for a positive person, you say, this is the opportunity. What can we do, to negate it? And what are the engineering opportunities, business opportunities to make it successful? So that is the way to look at it. I've always said that engineers are people who try to find solutions. Your job in life, your job as a technologist and engineer is to devise solutions to problems. That is it. Not to create problems themselves. If you see a problem, you don't run away from it. You see it as an opportunity to conquer and overcome the problem. So this is where climate change is going to provide so much opportunity for these things. These three basic areas, you see, home, work, and then general work environment. Each of those areas has a vast field of opportunity. In the home, just looking at the home, the cooking of the food, there is so much. It takes a lot of energy. At the moment, you don't live in the West, but because of the Ukraine war at the moment, what is happening, that you may have read in the news, that the fuel cost has gone up. In the UK, it has gone up almost 50% or more. Some people cannot afford to heat the houses because if the temperature goes to minus, we had, before I left, UK was -5. So they're afraid even to heat the home because it's so expensive. Some people are afraid to even cook their food. It is so bad, you know, the cost of fuel has gone up so much, it's creating so much problem. So you can look at opportunity. There are other ways of cooking food, you know. So all your food technologies and all these appliances, look at the opportunity there. And if you look at it wider in a more long-term sense, the production of food, there's so many ways of producing food and also developing the crops that may require less processing. If you look at each of these areas, the mind absolutely boggles as to the opportunity there is in these areas. And then the uses of food, then the waste management. Each of those areas you could set up a separate department to investigate that, or sub-departments. Do you not agree? You know, there is so much opportunity. So when we are talking of all your climate change, there is a wealth of opportunity behind that. And then let us look at this one, transport. There you are. We are talking of transport being very intensive in the use of energy. Of course, nowadays people are, especially, I don't know, in this country also, people are getting more health conscious. You know, walking wherever you can or cycling wherever you can rather than taking your car. And then the public transportation systems. All these things can be improved so that they can improve with a view of less pollution, less carbon footprint, all these things. So these are just broad ideas and topics, but I hope we will leave this with you and you can look at it and just analyze it and see which way you're going. Now recycling is another very big. I don't know how big the industry is in this country, but I'm sure there is. There must be people doing this recycling. Again, such a vast area, isn't it? Not just in waste collection and all that. There's all sorts of recycling that can be done. So there's another department, this Department of Recycling. Tomorrow we are going to have a very interesting session. Future direction of IIT, isn't it? What new departments are you going to set up? You know, you can't stick with the old mechanical, electrical, and these old three Buddha departments that I used to be in when I was here in 58 to 62. There must be new departments that you can think of, and all embracing departments that integrated, maybe a department for sustainability, isn't it? You know, so there's so many areas you can look at. So you see the opportunity is absolutely wide. So look at that. Each of these areas, I'm sure it is being done, but so much more can be done. So much more can be done about this. At the moment, usually in developing countries, like all your Bangladesh, even India and Thailand and Indonesia, that is usually the dumping ground for the West waste, you know. But then that can be an opportunity as well, you know, you can make money from that, not just collecting bad waste, but making new things out of it, you know. There's, again, I'm not a technologist, I'm only helping you to see the wider picture of where the opportunities lie. So again, this is a positive talk because we're looking at all the positives that come from this big problem of climate change and sustainability. So the two are really integrated and intertwined. You cannot separate one from the other. If we are talking of climate change, the sustainability has to come into that. It has to be taken together. You know, so if there's climate change, you know, how can we do to negate it, and then how to make it sustainable, how the planet is sustainable. Here you are. Now the renewable energy systems. Look at the opportunity there. As technologists, each of those areas, you can have a separate department of each of those, isn't it? Department for solar power, solar PV, so many things. I don't need to elaborate. You can just look at it and think of the opportunities, you see. But what I'm trying to do is to just pinpoint you, because when you are involved in just your narrow area, you get what is called blinkered vision. You only look down the tunnel and you don't see the wider picture. From time to time, you need to stand back and have a look at the wider picture of everything. And maybe it needs people to incentivize you, to say to you, stop, you must look at the wider picture. Just don't look at the narrow aspect of that particular system. So I think I've really thrown the topics over. Now I call these workshops, like yesterday. I'm not giving lecture. I'm not giving a lecture because I'm not clever enough to talk about that. I'm sparking ideas for you so that you can feed back to everyone in this room what your ideas are for climate change. But can I ask, do you all look at this issue of climate change in a serious way or not? Be honest. I don't think many of us do you? Please participate, otherwise this workshop will not work.
We do. Actually, if you see in the campus,
yes, I know solar PV.
Solar PV
Yeah.
installed. And not only that, we are thinking of electric vehicles inside the,
Okay.
especially the buses which are flying
Okay.
now are petrol driven.
Uh,
So we are thinking of diesel driven. We are thinking of converting those buses to
Good.
electric bus, and for that we have thought about putting chargers,
uh,
electric chargers, different points in the campus. And also we have a solar center for researching on solar
oh,
renewable energy. We are thinking of organizing workshop
oh,
on a regular basis to make
good,
people
very nice,
aware and
very good.
invite more attention towards research in this area.
Okay. Are you all getting collaboration also at the moment on that?
School of Energy. School of Energy,
Oh,
School of Environmental Science,
yes.
School of Water Resources. School of Water Resources also.
Okay.
And few alumni came forward to give scholarships and awards in this area
Okay.
for the best paper in environment and
Okay.
so
That would be very interesting.
then
yeah.
there is a department called water research under Professor Gangwekar,
Oh,
and they are also working on how we can recycle water and so those kind of things are being taken care of
yeah.
to the extent possible in our campus.
We have Koran,
Okay.
Center for Ocean, Rivers and Land.
Hmm.
They are also looking at, these are all interrelated.
Okay.
Small centers, but people from different departments come together.
Is the government doing much about these things?
Government is very serious, but it's also a bit confused.
Oh, not coordinated?
Because earlier there was a lot of focus on electric vehicles.
Oh,
Now suddenly they are talking about hydrogen.
yes.
But solar, of course, is going in a big way.
Oh,
You can see the generation also has gone up like anything. That's one positive thing. But the worrying thing is we have to import a lot of things.
I know China is leading in solar PV. I know.
That is one, and again, how do we handle the waste? Because
Okay.
so this is another very important area.
Oh, okay.
What is somewhat worrying is the per capita energy consumption, which is considered to be a measure of the development of nation. But that can be a dangerous thing for a country like India, because as the per capita energy consumption is
It's
increasing.
low. Yes, it's very
so
increasing.
I think that is where some rethinking is required for populous countries. The lifestyle, as you rightly said, I think that is a very important change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
And reducing the amount of travel required.
Yeah. You know, when you go to these big conferences like all this COP27 and all that, do they consult universities or people like you or not?
Yeah, they do.
They do?
It has increased of late. There is more interaction.
Oh,
Government also is involving universities and all in
Okay.
policy decisions and all that.
okay.
Things are happening, but maybe they have to happen at much faster rate.
Yeah. But is there like a central government that looks after climate change or not?
Yeah.
There is.
Yes, they are
Okay.
very serious.
Because in UK there is, They're also looking at, I was telling Anirban, my daughter used to be in television in a big way. And even the media industry, especially television industry, they are deeply involved in how to get the message of climate change across. You know, it is so important because some of these topics, they do not attract prime television time. You understand? Huh? It is not a sexy subject. People will not watch a program on climate change because it's not interesting. So the television industry and media industry is looking at ways how you can make it attractive. Can you see the detail they're going into? And we have some devolved government, like your state governments. Some of the state governments, like the Welsh government, has got a new law for climate change and all these things. So they're looking at it in a very serious way, you know. So I think the input always needs to be two-way, not just top-down, from bottom up, you know. You must make your voice heard to make it impress on the government and the authorities that be that this is a serious issue. So this is where universities with their learned knowledge and culture can influence government in their own way. That's a very good contribution. Anyone else? Some of you students, the future is bright for you?
What I feel is nowadays the transfer of information or the media that's functioning in a country, they are showing things of their benefit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So how can things be altered, like any alternative ways in which we can think of transferring this information regarding anything? Not only climate change, there are many other problems.
I don't have the answer, but I was just telling you, in UK, the media industry, the television and university, they're working together to see what ways they can devise so that these programs about climate change become attractive to the general public. It is treated in a very serious way because these are problems you cannot just sit back and expect it to happen. The media industry is looking very seriously at this because everyone is concerned, you know, and that is a good thing, isn't it?
So if you see in few places in Calcutta, I have seen that now the government is displaying the air quality. So
that's right.
that kind
Yes,
of awareness
yes.
is not there.
Awareness. Yeah, yeah. And where does that initiative come from? Does it come from the general public?
No, it's from the government.
Government, okay. But of course, you know, the electorate is the people they're trying to satisfy. I think if the electorate or general public complain enough, then government should take notice of these things. So it's two-way street.
I mean, there is no mass movement. That is what is required, but that is not there, frankly speaking. It is the initiative of the government, but public priorities are still slightly different. Probably in the West, that is the difference.
Yes.
Public priority is this is a major priority.
Yeah.
But in our country, it is still not a priority for the vast majority.
Well, in Delhi, if they complain about the bad air quality, then something gets done, isn't it? But only if the air quality is bad. But in the West, yeah, generally air quality is much better. But even then, they are still concerned about, you know, emission from cars. Like in London, they're thinking of banning all diesel cars going into London. At the moment you go into London with a diesel car, you have to pay a charge, £12 to go into the centre of London if you drive a diesel car. You know, so things like that. There's lots of action is being taken to improve air quality, issues like that. So that is just on the air quality, you know, food production. I can see in this IIT, all your old Department of Agriculture and all this rural development, they used to be at the bottom of the list, isn't it? They were not the sexy departments. In the future, they will become so important, you know, the food production and all that. It must take on a new culture or image, new importance given to it.
I heard that in IIT they are doing some kind of waste management. All the halls, whatever waste is being produced, they are doing
Okay,
some kind
that's
of
very good, very
waste
good.
management.
Well, if you don't do it, you know, how can the country take, you know, you have to lead the way, you're the leaders to innovate these things.
Even some work is going on this space waste,
Yeah.
waste which has been derived
Yes.
in space. So
Oh,
I think,
that as well, huh? To
departments
correct
are
it, yeah.
working on that.
And India, of course, is leading in space, or quite
Yes.
active and world leader in space. Yes, sir.
Sir, actually, in my opinion, like in India, as such the social consciousness
Ah,
or the understanding for like these global climate change, so we have to go a long way. In fact, sir, I mean, media can basically, it's again, so you were saying that it's a top-down approach, that all the global leaders across the
Yes.
world are deciding, they are the decision makers, they decide the agenda, and then the media is just like a
filter down, yes. Ah,
I mean, sir, still at the bottom level also we have seen that, sir, like if you go to a public toilet in India, we used to have this pay and use situation across this country, but then people don't use it. Even the educated masses also. So what I have understood is that, sir, that even that because of advent of internet, social media, now this has become democratized. That now the global climate change is becoming easier to access for people to of my generation to consume and think upon, rather than I
Yeah.
mean some global leader talking
Yeah.
about it
Yeah.
either in World Economic Forum or in India. So, but with that social consciousness, because we are ingrained, hardwired that because it's free, it's easy, so we should take it for granted.
yeah.
This thing has to start at the very basic level in the schools or at the homes.
Yeah.
You know, so the elders they coming forward and telling the kids,
Yeah.
which they do, of course.
They
all
do,
were
yes.
means we were all were brought up in the same way, but some kind of school level education where students are made to not vibe, but dream the normal role.
Is
of
it happening?
classrooms,
Is it happening?
Kind of thing. These kind of activities can create some
Yes.
consciousness, some understanding at a very small level.
That's right, yeah.
That requires some kind of, I mean, not a revolution I would say, but kind of a movement. And IITs and IIMs are the best place to start.
Yes.
Because we are at the intellectual elite
Yes.
of this country.
Sure, yeah.
This is what I think.
So this is where it's not just technology, there's also a lot of social element in it, isn't it?
Yes.
So this, what would you call it, social engineering or whatever, I don't know what the appropriate term is. But for me, when I look at these, it is so exciting, you know, the prospects for the future, how to tackle these problems. So,
Social awareness is really important because of
is it?
we are doing some research here for
Oh,
mitigate this all problem. But
oh,
meanwhile, at the background, if I look at the hostels, suppose I stay in a PhD hostel, it's 1600 rooms,
yeah.
and most of the I've seen that the room is locked, but the light is on inside.
Okay.
Somewhat the geyser is on, so we need to aware that what's happening. Actually,
yeah.
I was in also power industry, so it's for generating unique power. There is a we got huge coal and water, and there's because of water wastage due to the demineralized of water.
It's only
So-
like 30% efficient.
so if we cut down the consumption
Oh.
at the beginning level, then this rise of problem will be also reduced some level. Then the rest of the thing can be done by the adapting the renewable things. So lifestyle need to change because I have people here also. I've seen that there is a very short distance and there is a no hilly area, so there is a no need to any bike like things. But people students are using also bike here. Only cycle is enough, but actually the
Some
social
years
awareness-
back when I came, a lot of people were using scooters and all that.
Yes,
I think, is that reduced now?
yes.
More bicycles again. So I think one should start on the more immediate, that means within the campus, you know, set an example and look at these things. Again, is there like a framework or structure where someone is the, you know, sustainability in charge in IIT, you know, this should, do you not think you need someone to sort of coordinate these things, isn't it? Or at least raise the issues, otherwise nothing will ever get done, isn't it? I'm only being what they call devil's advocate. You know what devil's advocate is? I mean, prod your conscience, make it known that these things need to be looked at, otherwise nothing will ever get done, you know. I don't know what else, this is such a big issue. I was hoping that more of you will take part and suggest ideas and things for these things.
In UK, is there any change in curriculum and all?
In the schools, yes, there is. Yes, there is in schools.
Recent times?
I think in the last 4 or 5 years, the children are being taught that, yeah. And the awareness in cities as well. As I told you, all this pollution and all, they're reducing travel. But it's very hard problem because I like to drive my car, how can you take public transport? Public transport in UK is very difficult. It is not efficient. It is not efficient. The trains are not efficient. Buses are not efficient. So I prefer to drive my car. So, there's such a lot of problems. I don't know where to even begin.
UK, there is a demand for the natural gas, or
We import, because as you know from the North Sea, the UK sector of the North Sea, we still produce some gas, but not enough. I don't know what the percentage is. It could be like 2% or something. But we are importing in a big way from Qatar. As you know, Qatar is a big producer of LNG, is it? I don't know. So they produce a lot, so they're using a lot of gas. So compared to Germany and Poland and all these countries in the EU, because we come out of the EU, the UK is not suffering so bad from this Ukraine war, because we are still getting energy from other sources. But because these prices of the fossil fuels is determined worldwide, you still have to pay the high price. So there is a problem there. There is a problem there. I don't know what else. I'm only sparking ideas, I mean.
So why can't we this is my suggestion.
Yes.
Because you are here, and this is the right forum where we can actually share ideas.
Yes.
So why can't we involve startups who are mostly into sustainability issues?
Yeah.
So there's a startup called Bion kind of a startup from Spain.
Yeah.
They are basically harvesting electricity from grass, from soil.
Oh.
So why can't we have a tech kind of sessions where we basically bring
Yeah,
in
there you are, look at
ideas,
this.
sharing, or
You should come to tomorrow's session, the future of IIT. I remember Professor Sanyal was responsible for STEP, wasn't it? I remember back, maybe 20 years back. I don't know how active it is. Is it very active, your STEP? Are there many people who actually, yeah? How do you incentivize them to actually take it seriously? Because a lot of these things is not a short-term thing, not even medium-term. It is a longer-term project, isn't it? And one has to have the foresight to see the future, that there is opportunity there. So I don't know whether you need more incentivization, like funding and all that, from some investment angel to look at these things, to get them to sponsor this sort of startup. Yeah. Are there many investors, who are what you call investment angels, who get involved in STEP? I don't know. I'm not familiar with what is happening in STEP these days. No, not many.
So we have a vibrant entrepreneurship cell here.
Oh.
Being run by the BTech students, but it is more of an activity kind of thing, because we are not able to gather the investment crowd basically. We have a good plethora and a good portfolio of startups which was started by the IITs.
Well, there you are, the alumni group here. Anybody, you got a job for life. You need to incentivize the alumni. Say, this is the people with ideas. They're wanting to seek funding for this and that. A startup, be a marriage broker. Get them together. Don't you think it is the right way to do it? In India, they're so good at arranging marriages. Why don't you arrange a marriage of investors and entrepreneurs and people with the ideas? There's such a lot of opportunity there. So, as I say, I'm just throwing up ideas for you to do. Note it down. There you are. Just that alone is worth my visit. No, as I say, it's not just me. I think you need someone from outside to help you look at these things, because when you live in a certain area, you never see the problem. like in my own business, which is really like just a garden center type thing, we used to have groups. We call them like self-improvement group. That means we used to have groups of 10 people. That means 10 owners of these businesses, similar type business. We visit each other's premises to look at how the business is run. So it's a self-help group. So they will walk around and say, you know, this you can do better, that you can do better. You know, that is the way you improve. I don't know whether you have that sort of thing here, you know, maybe with other IITs or other organizations. Invite people to come around to look at the campus, look at what you're doing, say, you know, you can improve that, you can improve this. So an outside view is very, very important. Otherwise, if you're in your own community, you don't see it, and you're afraid to say it. You're afraid to say it because, oh, the boss will scold me, you know, you shouldn't say these things. You need someone from the outside to come, don't you agree? To say, this is not right, that is not right, put it right, you know, so that would be helpful, you know. You've got so many high-powered alumni who can do that. Just invite them for 1 or 2 day visit, have a look at it in their area of expertise, what can be done to improve the things. So again, this is on a more practical level rather than going to all these esoteric things of climate change. So sustainability and all that can work at a small micro level rather than a macro level. Do you not agree? What else have you got? Any ideas? You all are clever people. Come on, just speak up.
I think one problem, like along with the technology,
Yes.
problem technology research is required, social aspect we discussed. Another is economics.
Yes.
What will happen in India is, because it is still a developing country,
Yes.
majority people who, like suppose we come to attacks in automobile industry, like we plan that we will tone down the petrol cars, the public transport will increase, the industry suffers, and so people will oppose that instead of supporting
Yeah,
for
it's a
climate change,
difficult
people
one.
will oppose for economic reasons.
Yeah, like electric cars. How many people can afford electric cars? So expensive. Even in the UK, I can't afford electric car. It is so expensive. I think the minimum cost of electric vehicle is about 35, 40,000 pounds for a small vehicle compared to other vehicle, which is half the price, isn't it? The conventional vehicle. So that is a problem. But then you have to find a solution for it, you know. It is a very valid problem.
Other industries, like if we tone down the consumption,
Yeah.
it will reflect on
Business.
jobs, business
Yeah.
and economy.
Oh.
In Calcutta, I see the government is buying mostly electric buses.
Oh.
They are not purchasing any other
Okay.
for fossil fuel driven cars.
Hmm.
So that's a mandate, I guess.
Okay.
So all the
And
buses
improve the
are-
climate as well, the environment.
But one thing that I think we have to see the route, because that electricity again is generated by coal.
Hmm.
So unless we are going for alternate
That's
source of
right.
energy, it is again eating the
I know.
source actually, the
Yeah.
fossil fuel source.
Like in the West, you know, a lot of people say, oh, we're going to have electric car, we're going to have this electric, but they don't realize that the fossil fuel generation is producing all that electricity. But because they're not technical people, they don't see that side of it, you know. They don't realize that, you know, you buy electric vehicle, you're still having to generate the power somehow. And that is the big problem. So in the power generation, I think that will be the biggest change. I can see a day when the renewable, you know, from solar, wind or whatever, renewables will replace all the fossil fuel generation, not just nuclear. That must come about. That must be a huge area, huge area for improving. So I think nowadays, like supposing if you look at the activities of any of your departments, like electrical engineering, all these motor design and other designs, you can't just look at it like that. You've got to look at it in the totality, you know. If you design that motor, how can you recycle it? How can you do this and that? You've got to look at it from so many different aspects, you know, so the total mindset has to change with engineering. Do you not agree? You know, it is completely different now from what I did 60 years ago or more. It's exciting, don't you think? Very exciting. What else? Some other guys who haven't spoken, or ladies?
allowed to suggest like how would you invest the income tax? I mean, how would you suggest the government to invest your income tax yearly on one specific problem that you are facing? Do you think that that would be a
Yes, very good idea. Very good idea, isn't it? Yeah, because after all,
That was the Indian government, but I mean, like I had made people were working, like did not get any response. Then I was trying like an open source project to develop something and give them the idea.
yeah, but
I
that,
also got backlash that this might hamper the decision making.
yeah, that's difficult because that becomes very specific, isn't it? When you exercise your democratic right, you're voting for the government to come into power, and that government usually sets out its policies and what they're going to do in certain broad areas. So to influence it at a micro level is more difficult. Maybe local government, if you pay local taxes, then perhaps you can say that local tax should go for more buses or something like that. But at a macro level of the central government, it is difficult to influence it, isn't it? It is difficult, but again, it should be borne in mind. You can tell your politician that, but how much notice will the politician take of that, I don't know. But it should be raised, I'm sure, if everyone raises that point.
The point being that in certain cities where the suppose air quality index is very high,
Yeah,
the people who are living there would want that their money which they are paying to the government
Yeah.
should be invested in that specific problem because they are breathing every second.
yeah,
So they are having like equivalent to 20, 30 cities,
Yes.
like equivalent to the air quality index because
Mm.
the air quality is
Mm.
bad. So, but if the government, because we are paying the tax and it is going to a general pool, and we don't know what it is being used in.
that's right.
So our suggestion might help like to make a bucket. So for example, in the bucket everybody is using that specific
Yes.
including the air quality index in that specific area.
Yeah,
So maybe this might be, this is one of the positive things.
yeah. I think that would really apply to local politics, isn't it? If you have local election or local councillor, then you can say, yes, I want my local tax, to go into that. Like in the UK, we have central income tax and then local tax. That means if I own a house, I pay property tax. Like in our case, we pay like £2,500 a year for property tax. You own a house, you pay the tax. And that tax, everyone's tax, is used to fund the schooling, the police, the local roads, that sort of thing. And then the central income tax goes to fund our national health. We have free health service, that sort of thing, national air quality, these sort of issues are paid. So the local tax, you can have some say, some influence in how that is used. Yes, I get your point. It's a very valid point. Yeah. But at least you have the say. India is the biggest democracy, you can have a say, but how you implement it is another matter. Some countries, they don't. I mean, you may say I'm a Chinese face, but I'm not Chinese. I've never been to China. There they do it. They do it just like that. I don't know whether it works. As they say, what is it? In India, there is what is it? There is the law, but people don't obey it. In China, there is no law, but people have to obey. It's different approach.
The suggestions what probably you came up with water, environment, energy, renewables. So some schools and centers have already started.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And maybe two things I find.
Attached to universities or what?
Yeah, attached to IIT.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh.
We have a Center of Water Resource
Okay.
Management, Center of Energy Science,
Oh.
and a School of Environmental Science.
So they must have the wider picture, sustainability and all that involved in it.
Yeah, two things which I do not know, maybe someone can suggest is about the sustainability aspect and the recycling engineering.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
those need to,
You don't have much of that at the moment? Oh.
not to my knowledge, but I'll request the deans to also comment because.
I mean, there is a small this thing. We have School of Energy, School of Environmental Science, etc.
Okay.
But we are finding them to they themselves are not very sustainable now.
What, not a sexy subject?
Exactly. Because we are not getting students, hardly any MTech programs, people don't
They
know.
only do computer
I think everything
science.
is linked with the jobs.
Ah.
So that is where.
So how do you change the mindset of that, isn't it?
So actually, it's basically job driven.
Yeah.
So after you study, you need to
Get a
have
job.
some that type of assurance.
Oh.
So that market or that mindset has to come up
Oh.
even in the society
No.
or something. It will take time.
No, I think to address this problem, some amount of hardship is required. I mean, we have to face some hardship.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you can't be in a comfortable zone and handle the problem.
Yeah.
Probably we have to sacrifice certain things.
But as I was mentioning about the media industry in the UK, they're devising all sorts of ways to make this awareness known to the general public. Perhaps you should, it's a hard task, but you have to address that problem, you know. Make it known to the students, sell that concept that for the future is important, and get them driven to follow those subjects and follow those careers, because it is the future, isn't it? It is bound to the future.
In that context, one compulsory subject for all undergraduate students is there on environmental science.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But that's for long, I think
Yeah.
over 10 years.
Would it be under the humanities department? No, different from
It's
that.
under
Oh.
civil engineering, environmental.
Actually, it is a mandate of the government that we should teach environmental science and biological science to everybody.
Oh,
So we introduced two graded
Okay.
subjects.
Hmm.
So initially we used to teach them in second year. I think now we are teaching them in first year.
yeah. But surely, you know, because government relies on ideas to come from the bottom as well. So if institutes like you come up with brilliant ideas, they will take more notice of you, and the status of IIT Kharagpur will go up as well, that all these ideas are coming from the bottom, you know. So I think you should pursue this much more. I can, yeah, yes. Ah. Yeah, we were talking of this earlier. We have to work on that. We have to work on that. Yeah. Oh. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. But you can see we are preparing the ground. I hope tomorrow's session will be well attended, because we're talking of future direction of IIT Kharagpur. So these are all very, very important topics, you know, for the future, because we're looking at the future, we're not looking at the past, what the future environment is, all your sustainability and all, and how the nature of the institute needs to change and adapt to these situations. So I hope we can generate some useful discussion and fed back to the authorities, not just of this institute, but also higher up among all the IITs and in central government or HRD, whatever, of these things. So as I say, I'm only sparking ideas for you to discuss, and I hope tomorrow it will be a worthwhile session where we can make use of these things and take it forward. I don't know how far we have exhausted this subject. I don't know whether I've outrun my time. I think the discussion has been very useful today. Do you not think? It is sparking off ideas. And thank you, sir. Yes.
One thing I have is presently we see more involvement of academic institutes in various research programs of the government. So that aspect has increased in a big way. But you know, involvement of academic institutes in something like, you know, framing a policy, something like that, is not that much.
Does government involve you in this sort of thing, framing policy? I'm sure they must, isn't it?
They do.
Oh. Because they have to have the brains behind all the policies.
Sir, but actually how to praise the government as such, because sometimes they try to change the culture from the bottom portion, like the school population, in which you should take care of the water, you should take care of not using vehicle if you can walk and all these things. But almost 70% this water, this course and all these products that goes into normal potable water is coming from the industry. So they are saying like it's because of population and people that are using a lot of vehicles and this and that, they produce the most. So even though it's actually required a change in the culture, like you need to sensitize the people to be careful with the resources and all these things and this and that. It comes actually from the outer portion.
Yeah.
It technically comes from the government.
Yeah.
So, and also as they were mentioned before, it's an economically prudence equation.
Yeah.
They will not replace anything that comes from fossil fuel, like fossil resources, because it's not economically feasible. So even batteries and all these things, like they are actually expensive to manufacture. That's why their vehicles are so expensive. So maybe if sometimes it's a trend from the other, like the other direction, then it can be maybe change the situation a little bit. Because as much as sometimes people try to push from below, like institutions or students, or people are trying to make a change, if it does not go through the last stage that is actually implementing in that part, then sadly the situation will not change.
Yeah, exactly.
At least that's what I do believe.
Yeah. So this brings us back again. You cannot look at technology and engineering in the old-fashioned sense, where it is completely divorced from life. It is so much driven by other factors, you know, the human factors, environmental factors. So before you design a machine, you have to look at all the social factors and all that before you can start trying to think of a design for the solution. So I think the whole concept or approach to technology has altered very fast. It's changing very, very fast. And these are the issues you need to address. I don't know how you're going to do that, have a different department or interdepartmental sort of organization to deal with these issues. Do you have like a central think tank in the institute that looks at these issues? Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about these things. I hope director will sit in for some of the session. Yes, sir.
Many times I have also I was part of the Tata group where we were in the basically in the team of designing the policy framework for end of life vehicles.
Yes.
Policy.
Okay.
So as compared as when it comes to India, sir, we are quite behind in policy implementation and policy formulation also.
Oh.
So if you look at the drone policy which the country has come up, sir. So if you look at the proper the report from the Niti Aayog, the planning commission, sir. So it is a very disheartening fact to understand that none of the technological experts were involved.
Really?
I mean, this is a parallel dichotomy that a technology policy in this country is being designed by the bureaucrats, but they're not involving the professors or the faculties from IITs or TIFR or IISc Bangalore or others intellectually elite institutions, because they're in touch with the TIFAC Council. Even TIFAC Council was not even considered for the policy formulation.
Yes.
So I mean, at the end of the day, so the implementation has to be considered from the ground level perspective.
Yeah. So how do you change that?
That requires some kind of a dialogue with the ministers or with the government, that at least the people who are going to use the technology in their daily lives, their say matters most.
Yeah.
So customers' voice matters most when it comes to the proper marketing analysis.
But this is where you can influence the media industry as well. Like I was telling you, you know, in the UK they're looking at how do you change the mindset, because it is a popular movement and you got to transfer those concepts and ideas through the media, get science writers or other reporters to write about these issues, you know, just feed them the stuff, tell them that this is a problem, how you can make it more widely known. You've got to involve that as well, you know.
We have these kind of usage data, sir, like Microsoft and other companies, they collect data. How are we using their operating system?
Okay.
So it has to, they can better come up with better versions. So I mean, if this kind of a suggestion can go to our government and other governments around the world, that if private companies are collecting usage data, so for the public infrastructure, how people are consuming the infrastructure, if that data can go back to the government and some kind of improvement can happen in the next policy formulation, in that way, sir, we can come up with a complete a dual dialogue between the government and the people, that this is how sustainability, climate change can be better designed. It's a kind of a design thinking at the population or at the diaspora level. That's what I think.
Well, I don't want to drop names of companies. Corporate social responsibility needs to take that on board. I noticed that in the UK recently, some very big companies which sell consumer products, they are advertising with a social conscience, you know, how to help the poor people and all that. They're not trying to sell their products. They're just spending their television advertising budget on helping less privileged people, you know, the disadvantaged people. So that sort of thing should be encouraged much more. I suppose the big companies should be doing much more of that. I can see your I don't mention the name again. There must be a lot of responsible companies in India. They should be doing this, isn't it? Yeah.
If we want to market a particular policy or an ideology, this is how things should start. That we should take back the data, like how the previous organizations are collecting data for the government and of course from the private corporation, and then we can use the same methodology, same perspective, and then people can actually interact with the government more.
Are they doing it a bit?
So sadly no.
Sadly no.
Limited knowledge, limited understanding, sir. We have to gather ourselves up in this particular direction.
Because actually at the end of the day, the ones who are using all the products and they will use it, it's like simple people, like they don't. So that not only happens here, it happens also in my place. People who actually don't have the expertise or the qualification to design something, they just like give some product and they just like sell it and it doesn't matter. So it's not useful for those who live day by day. So actually what he says is really true. If there is not that feedback from the ones who are consuming it, then there will be no improvement. Like there is like a bubble phone on that.
I think that philosophy must come right from the very top, isn't it? Right from the top. Hopefully, you know, these top positions are now being occupied, hopefully, by people, the products of your IITs, who will have that conscience and try and influence it like that. It must come from there and not just serve the interests of the company to produce super profits, but, you know, divert the profit into these sort of areas which are more socially responsible. Yes.
So can you please talk about your company, your organization?
I've got another program after that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the bonsai program. If you sit on it, we'll run through that again after the break. I think, do you think we have wrapped it up now?
I think we can have a break after.
Yeah, okay. As I say, there's only to spark of ideas. I hope it has been useful to feed this sort of ideas and make it more widely known to the IIT community that these issues should be on the top of your mind. And as I say, tomorrow's session, I hope there will be more attendance and more participation in that, you know, future direction of IIT. These are the sort of issues we need to look at in depth and suggest frameworks to take it forward. It's one thing to talk about it, but if nothing is done, what is the point, isn't it? You know, talking about it gets you nowhere. You have to act. Action is needed. Action is needed. So I hope you've enjoyed this little session. I only touched the surface, but you can see the wide scope there is in all these issues. And we will take it forward, and I hope you will take it forward. All right, so thank you for attending.
there is a discussion going on.
Let us hear it. Let us hear
unless
it.
the poverty index is improving.
Oh.
So it's very difficult for people to adapt such kind of things because if you go into villages, you find that a lot of motorcycles are still run by kerosene. Kerosene is
Oh,
a
I
very
know.
good oil,
Oh.
high
Toxic.
toxic emission.
Oh.
But again, that's the fact that people try to save money because they have limited money.
Mm.
So it's for a country like India, there are several challenges, but government is trying to address.
Okay.
You can see this time we went to Chennai, we went to a commercial building which is being constructed. The person told that the government has mandated that 50% of the roof should be covered with solar panels.
Oh, good.
So that is something, and you know, on electric vehicles, government is giving a lot of discount on tax.
Yes. Yes.
So in the coal-fired that the power plants,
Yeah.
there is the government has clear mandate of what will be the air quality which will be going,
Oh.
which will be emitted. Before that,
Yes.
you need to treat the waste before you can. And the chimney height is also defined that chimney
Yeah.
height should be this much and this elevation only the smoke should come out. So those kind of policies are there. I don't know about monitoring part
Oh.
because, but definitely government is trying to the extent, but it should be an inclusive approach.
Yes.
Including like the millions of our rural populations and
Yeah.
people staying.
See, perhaps you should have a conference from time to time.
Below poverty level.
You know, IIT can take initiative in organizing conferences like this. I don't know how much participation you will get. You know, you need to really generate enough interest
Because
to.
if you go to villages, you will find people still burning leaves.
Oh.
And,
Oh, yes. Even in the big cities, you know, they're
cooking,
lighting.
no?
They're cooking with wood fires and all in the
Wood fires.
city. Yeah.
It's a social problem, but gradually things are being
Yeah.
addressed. I can see some movement.
Yeah.
One of the friend on YouTube is writing social entrepreneurship.
Government also have that Ujjwala Yojana where they gave this LPG cylinders to you. Thing is that is one time. How to make it sustainable? They have to refill it also.
Yes.
Use it on the sustainable. So that is a problem.
It's such a big problem.
Actually, climate change is a global problem.
It's a global
But probably we don't have a global solution. The solution probably has to be a local.
I know. See, now this Ukraine war has changed everything, you know, with this fuel cost. Yeah, they're starting to build power stations again using fossil fuel. But at least as long as you're aware of the problem, you should tackle it. Apparently, some of the literature you read that within 5 or 10 years it could become such a big problem that the world may collapse. I don't know how far that is true. Maybe some truth in it. Okay, let us take a break.
For 5 minutes and
Yeah, and then come and then I will tell you about my bonsai business.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Welcome back.
Yeah, where are all the others? Gone home.
Their extended tea break. Where are others? Any idea? Nothing. Anywhere you spotted them? Okay, cool. So they will be joining us now.
Okay.
So this next session will be on one of the very passionate topics of Peter, is on bonsai. So, although he is our electrical engineering graduate, but he is the world famous in that activity of bonsai and other. We recently had visited UK and he is also that bonsai place, and it was amazing. Maybe we should have some of its glimpses if he is going to share some of the
Okay.
reviews, or I don't know.
They need to change their presentation.
Next now, it will change for
This was last one. What is it? No, no. Ah, this one. Okay. All right. Now this presentation, getting out of the rat race to pursue my dream. When you've worked in your career for quite a few years, you get bored. And I have changed my career twice. That means this is my third career. Bonsai is my third career. So I think as you go through life, even you, I don't know whether you're stuck in a rat race or not, how to get out of the rat race. In the West, a lot of people like bankers and people in big industry, they feel so much pressure. We were talking yesterday about well-being. They feel so much pressure that they feel that they've got to get out of the rat race. You understand what rat race means, huh? You're on the treadmill forever, chasing your tail and getting nowhere and getting very stressed in life. So let me go through what I did, because as I said, bonsai is my third career, and how I managed to get out of that rat race to pursue the dream. So here we are. That is a picture of a bonsai tree. That tree would be about, I would say, 70 or 80 years old. It came from Japan about 35, 36 years ago, and I built the infrastructure. That means from Japan, it was only so thick in 1990 or so, and then over the 30 years it became so big, and all these branches were created by me. Bonsai is about creating sculpture with living plants. So you're creating a work of art. It is not just plain horticulture. You're creating art. So I really am an artist. In the bonsai industry, we are called bonsai artists. And this is a very beautiful tree. You must be wondering why people are fascinated by bonsai. They're beautiful things. Like, why do people buy paintings and sculptures? You can't eat it, you can't do anything with it, you only look at it, you know. Bonsai is slightly different. Apart from looking at it, you admire it, but you also look after it. So you're giving it care, and you're like raising a baby or raising a pet. So there's that other dimension to bonsai, which makes it different from collecting paintings or sculpture. So, and why do people do it? We were talking yesterday about well-being. Growing plants and other things gives you well-being, it improves your mindset, it makes you feel relaxed. So all over the world, bonsai is not just confined to Japan or China, but all over the world, bonsai has a huge following. In India, after I leave Kharagpur, I'm going to Calcutta, Delhi, Bombay, Pune to teach bonsai, because there is a huge following even in India for bonsai. So people are becoming aware that bonsai has a lot of other value apart from the commercial value, that this well-being value and other things that are beneficial to your human psyche. So, as I always like to tell people, I'm only a Mali. For those of you who were here yesterday, when I used to come with Professor Sanyal, and he used to introduce me to all your other professors, they all asked me, what do you do, you see? So I teased them, or Professor Sanyal used to tell them, he's in the plant business. So the first question they ask after that, what plant? Electrical plant, chemical plant, gas plant? I said, no, none of those. It's just plant, real plant. And they get very disappointed that a technologist has ended up being a Mali. But I make a living as a Mali. So I'm everything to do with bonsai. The bonsai industry is a very niche industry, but I'm a bonsai grower. I deal with bonsai, that means I sell bonsai. I'm a bonsai artist. I teach. I'm an author. And the latest thing, I'm called, my daughter who's in television says I'm a YouTube sensation. I have 500,000 YouTube subscribers and over 53 million views. So I have very big following. Even in Mumbai, when I was standing in the immigration queue, someone came from the back and tapped my shoulder and said, I recognize you from YouTube. Can you imagine? So people do recognize me now. So the YouTube has become very big. Social media is so important. Why did I choose bonsai? You must be asking. You know, why did I choose this thing as bonsai? But what was more relevant is, what is bonsai? Now, these are examples of bonsai. So bonsai are grown in pots, as you can see there, but it is not simply a tree in a pot. It is an artistic creation of a fully grown tree in a miniature form. This second tree here, I sold about 20 years back, and that tree has a value of about 50,000 pounds, like 50 lakhs. In Japan, there are some trees which are worth maybe £500,000. That means more than, say, $750,000 US. So they are valuable trees in Japan as well. So all these are very famous, valuable trees. So they have a commercial value. So why do people buy and collect these things or grow these things? Because they're beautiful. They are works of art, you know. It's like a painting or sculpture. They're works of art, but they're living works of art. And of course, I don't know how, okay. Now, the history of bonsai, for those of you who don't know, many people commonly think that bonsai is a Japanese art. How many of you thought that bonsai is Japanese? I think most people think that bonsai is Japanese. It is not. The Chinese are the first people who invented bonsai. And bonsai has a long tradition which goes back as far as 2,000 years ago. And whereas the Japanese have been doing it only for 900 years. Those of you who follow Japanese culture will know that the Japanese writing, the script, like your Sanskrit and all, is the root for all the Hindi and Bengali and all that. So the root of the Japanese writing script is Chinese, called kanji. Yeah. So all these things, cultural things like writing, poetry, all the arts come from China. Japan never had an art, you know. They didn't have a written language till 600 AD. So Chinese started all these things, and bonsai was one of the things they did. How it came about is simply this. If you are a horticulturist, you know, especially in the West, there are many plants with names, sinensis and all that. So these plants come from China. The European plant hunters in the 17th century, 18th century, they went to the Far East and discovered all these plants and took them to the West to grow them. So Chinese people have had a long tradition of horticulture. That means they've been growing plants, breeding different varieties of plants for at least 1,000 or 2,000 years. Also, the Chinese have a very long tradition of ceramics, not just earthenware, like the flower pot or the gamla, not that. High-fired ceramics, you know, like your dinner plates, that sort of thing, porcelain and stoneware, which is fired to 1200 degrees centigrade, not 800-900 degrees centigrade. So they've always been making ceramics for maybe at least 2,000 years. Some people say even 4,000 years they've been making high-fired ceramics. So when horticulture and ceramics came together, the two combined to make what we call potted plants or bonsai. That means you're growing a plant in a ceramic pot, and by growing a plant in a ceramic pot or just an ordinary pot, the size of the plant is automatically reduced. The roots are not so vigorous, so the size becomes reduced, and you can always shape the shape of the plant by cutting and trimming, and you can make it look artistic and beautiful. So that in essence is what bonsai is about. It is about growing artistic plants. This is a picture which was given to me by an English lady. She served in Japan just after the Second World War, and if I show you the next slide at the back, it's dated 1947. She went to help Japan after the war to rebuild Japan, and she visited this small tree nursery, bonsai nursery. Much of the reason why bonsai became known as a Japanese art is because after the Second World War, the American GIs who were fighting in Japan and from Japan, they went back to America and they took what they saw in Japan, all these funny dwarf trees, back to America. And that's how the knowledge of bonsai spread in the West. As a result of the Second War, the Japanese trees were taken by American GIs, and they made it more widely known in the West through America. And that is why I think today most people still think that bonsai originated from Japan. Not so. Okay. Now these are examples of Chinese bonsai. You see, the Chinese have a different style of making bonsai. These are all miniature plants with miniature rocks, and even on artificial rocks in the public gardens, they grow plants on these artificial rocks, and they stunt the plants to give mountain scenery. So bonsai has all these other aspects and facets. Now these are some of my own trees. You see how beautiful they are? So why does a bonsai stay small? A bonsai stays small because the roots are restricted in the pot, and by constantly cutting the roots and by shaping the branches and the foliage, you can get it to look beautiful. It's like going to your barber's, cutting your hair in a certain way, you know, it makes you look beautiful. So it is like a cosmetic surgery done to plants. That's what makes it beautiful. So that is what the bonsai is all about. So why do people love bonsai? They love bonsai because they're beautiful things. It keeps you in touch with nature. It's a pastime or hobby, and it gives peace of mind and relaxation. You know, all this well-being and things like that. Growing plants does relax you. I'm sure a lot of you grow plants once you get older and have your own house and garden. People love to grow plants. Why? Simply because it is a relaxing thing to do, you know. So growing plants and keeping in touch with nature is a very pleasurable thing. And as I say, it is now a hobby that is popular all over the world. I don't think there is a single country where bonsai does not exist. You name any country, Chile, Venezuela, Russia, every country in the world there is bonsai group society. And because I have such a big Instagram and YouTube following, some months back I posted a tree which grows in Iran called Parotia persica. Persica, that means it comes from Persia. And I had hundreds of responses from Iranian YouTube followers saying, oh, we've got hundreds of these trees in our country, you know. So I said, what country is that? I didn't recognize the name, so I said, we are from Iran. I didn't realize Iranian people were allowed to watch YouTube, but obviously so. They must let them watch certain you know, channels. So I realized that I have hundreds and thousands of followers in Iran alone following my YouTube channel in Iran. So it just shows that bonsai has a worldwide following. So bonsai is a blend of art and horticulture. And of course, the bonsai industry is a niche industry. And commercially, how I survive, you see there's gift market, leisure sector. That is who we target our customers. And of course, on the supply side, you have traders, growers, artists and teachers. There are some people who earn their living just teaching bonsai. You can be a bonsai teacher, you can travel the world. If I wanted to, because I do everything, I can earn my living just from going all over the world teaching about bonsai. But you have to live in a suitcase, you know, you don't live in your home. You have to go from place to place teaching bonsai. Some people do earn a living like that. They can't do anything else. So there is that side of it. And where do I fit in? As I said, I fit in all those categories. I'm a bonsai dealer, I'm a bonsai grower, I'm a bonsai teacher. Fortunately, because I have my own business, I don't have to travel the world to teach. Now, how did I get into bonsai? A lot of people ask me, how do you get into bonsai? And when people in the West see me with an oriental face, they said, oh, your father or grandfather must be into bonsai. Not so. My father was an electrical engineer. He graduated from Milwaukee School of Engineering in America. And my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He had this big factory in Tangra in Calcutta where they made railway carriages in 1890s, 1920s. So I don't have a tradition for bonsai. This is my wife. I got married in 1966. I was telling some people, especially the RK Hall people. I married my pen friend. When I was in IIT in 1960, I was 20 years old, and my wife, the then wife, she was my pen friend. She was age 15. And in those days, writing to pen friends or having pen friends was a very popular activity. My then wife had, I think, pen friends in about 9 different countries, Japan, Argentina, all sorts of places she used to write, just to learn their way of life. Because in those days, there was no internet and things. You learn about other people's lifestyle and culture by corresponding with them, you know. So I corresponded with my then wife, Dawn. And when I went to UK in 1963, we became friends and we got married in 1966. So that is me at my wedding in 1966. This is my first home. I went to England in 63, and within about 2 years I saved enough money to buy a flat, 2-bedroom apartment. In those days, the price of property was not expensive. It was only in the 70s, 80s it started rocketing in price. That house I paid £4,500, 4.5 lakhs, 1966. That same house is now worth about maybe £750,000, £750,000. How much is that? I don't know how much. 750,000, 750 lakhs it is worth now. So it has appreciated a lot in value. So in those days you could save money to buy a property, but nowadays most young people cannot afford it. So that is my first home. I show that picture, I tell you why, because it was a first floor apartment which I grew all my plants in flower pots in the balcony. I didn't have a garden. I lived on the flat, so everything I grew had to be grown in pots. Also at that time, I started doing hobbies. I always have had hobbies. I was making high-fired ceramics, making pottery things, articles. And I was making pottery, and because I was making pottery, I suddenly got the idea, why do I have to buy all these pots when I can make it as a hobby and pastime? So I started making pots, ceramic pots. And then I started putting plants in it. And then I discovered, with your engineering mind, inquiring mind, I discovered that if you grew plants in pots, they don't grow so fast. I didn't learn bonsai traditionally. I just observed. By observing, if you have an inquiring mind, you can see that by growing plants in pots, it reduces the size. And then I came across picture books of pictures of these so-called bonsai trees. I asked myself, how do you think they did it? Because back in those days, there were no written books about bonsai. Really, bonsai in the West only became popular in the 70s and later. I've written 10 books on bonsai. And those 10 books were all the results of my experiments. That means if I did this, that would happen. You do that, something else would happen. So all these experiments, I was able to translate and spread to other people. Do have a look at my YouTube channel. My big following is because I make bonsai very approachable and simple. I teach people how to, the art of bonsai. I don't hold any secrets behind. A lot of commercial people don't like it because they charge for the information, you know. A lot of these courses you have to pay for it, $100 a time or something. I give it completely free. So my competitors don't like me because I'm giving the information free. But I've got such a big following as a result of that. And of course, that also helps my business in a roundabout way. So I'm still the winner in the end. So it's a win-win situation. Sometimes you think that if you lost out by not charging them, what have I lost? I've gained in the long run. So that again is the positive approach to life. So then even in my second home, I moved to another house because I was changing a job. I was an electrical engineer in those days. From 1963 to 1974, that means about, I don't know how many years would that be, I worked as electrical engineer. So this was second home that I had, and again you see the plants were still growing in pots. And that is my children were born there, my wife and son on the right hand side, and I was very interested in plants. I've always grown plants and had beautiful garden. And this chess set was made by me, designed by me from ceramics, high-fight ceramics. So I was very artistic, you know, I was not really a technologist. So I designed that chess set and made it. And in the background you can see that little tree in the pot. That was my first ever bonsai that I made. And that was, I think, in 1969, 1970. I was starting to experiment more and more with bonsai. I show you this picture. This was our convocation, 1960. We graduated in 62. So the convocation ceremony was December 62. That guy was the topper of electrical engineering, Raj Cornelius, but sadly, he started his own company in Silicon Valley. He used to make all these fiber optic cables. He was one of the pioneers in that. But unfortunately, he's my same age, 82. He's got dementia for the last 5 years, so he's having a tough time. So that is life. The reason why I show this picture, you see, this is RK Hall. Can you just see this? If you go to RK Hall, that building is still there. This is in front of the common room. In front of the common room. And you see these plants here, these are sweet peas. I was gardening secretary of RK Hall. And I remember my budget, the warden gave me a budget of, I think it was 200 rupees a year. I don't think a month, 200 rupees a year in those days, 1958 to 62. And with that 200 rupees, we had to pay for the wages of the Mali and also buy the seeds for growing the plants. And we won so many of the inter-hall gardening competitions. Do you still have gardening competition now? Inter-hall? No? Probably not. But in those days, we had inter-hall gardening competition. And our RK Hall, because M.N. Rao, who was the warden, he was head of chemical engineering department, he was very interested in plants. He used to grow a lot of roses. So he encouraged us to make the RK Hall premises smart. So those beautiful sweet peas, I was responsible for growing. So that is my first encounter with floriculture, being gardening secretary of RK Hall. I don't know whether you still have this magazine here, do you? They don't produce it for convocation. But for quite a few years, they used to have this. For all the graduates, they used to show this magazine, which was the souvenir when you passed out. And against each person, they write a little description of what you were good at. I think yesterday I did show the same slide, and I was saying that apparently a lot of these parents used to look at this for prospective bridegrooms for their daughters, you know. So who was the most eligible bachelor from IIT that they could find? So if you read that entry there, under me, Peter Chan, born 18 August 1940. That 18 August is the Founders' Day of IIT Kharagpur, in case you didn't know. It says, quiet and handsome, Peter is known all over Bengal for his cycling. He got the Institute Blue for cycling and is also a wonderful speaker. So even in those days, I was speaking a lot. You know, I used to win the extempo speech contest. His room still bears testimony to his artistic nature. I occupied room 228C, and I used to draw murals on the white walls with chalk, you know, colored chalk. So I was known for that. So you can see why I was in the wrong department. I should never have joined electrical engineering because my maths was very bad. I was more artistic. I should have taken up architecture, but that's another story. But at the end of the day, I really am a landscape architect because I make Japanese gardens and I design gardens. So that is me. So that is a bigger picture there. And do you remember who that is? No? Before your time. He's YP Singh. He spent all his life in Kharagpur.
Yeah.
from student to professor, head of electrical engineering. But I think he had a bad accident in Kharagpur, isn't it? He had to be taken back to Delhi. He passed away about 3-4 years back. He passed away, YP Singh. Now I tell you this story because when I go to Delhi, I do a lot of demonstration on bonsai, and mainly to all these rich people, you know, all your Sri Ram family and this and that. And he entered in Facebook this little entry there. Are you reading it? This bit here, he found it very humorous because when you do bonsai, you shape the trees with wire, aluminum wire. So I said my only connection with electrical engineering is the wire I use for shaping the bonsai. No other connection with electrical engineering I had. So he found that very, very amusing. So for an IIT audience, I think you will find that very relevant, okay? So I travel all over the world, especially to India. I like coming back to India, where I teach how to make bonsai. This picture was probably 2005, a very old picture. And I don't think that sign exists anymore. When I first came back to Kharagpur, this must have been 1995 or 97. I donated some money. I think they've thrown away that sign. That sign says some of the trees on this campus were donated by Peter Chan. I donated some money to plant trees in the campus. Perhaps they should remember that for posterity. You remember Professor Sanyal? He was like the father of everyone in this campus, you know. He was a dear old guy. And even when I was working as an engineer, I was still developing bonsai as a hobby. My children there were only like 8 and 10 years old, or even younger than that. So my hobby was just bonsai, nothing more. This is with me, photograph taken in the Department of Energy. I worked in central government in the UK as energy policy advisor. I worked on offshore oil and gas, nuclear, coal, everything that had to do with energy I worked on. And even in that office I had pictures of bonsai there. So bonsai has always been an enduring pastime for me. As you can see, what does a civil servant do? They just push paper around. Paper pusher. But not only that, I was also writing speeches for ministers. Not only can I speak well, I'm not praising myself, I write and speak well, so I was writing speeches for political masters, including the then Prime Minister, some of the speeches for selling off the energy industries, because all the privatized industries now were nationalized industries before 1975-79. They were all belonged to the government, you know, nationalized industries, so they were all privatized. So some of the speeches for selling those industries I helped to write. These are some of the, I worked on a lot of offshore oil projects. I did some pioneering work there. I used to go to the North Sea oil, gas and oil platforms. I did work on that. So I did involve myself with these projects, but not on the technological side, but mainly on the administrative side, you know, as a government servant. I helped to devise treaties between different countries to share oil and gas, things like that. And these are trips I used to make to Norway to deal with oil and gas. That is me in the corner there. I show this picture because this is a picture of my previous house before I came to Herons, where I had a garden like this. Beautiful English garden where you just grew beautiful plants. The English love their plants. So this is a picture of the garden. This was in 1975 when I purchased this house with a beautiful English garden. And 10 years later, when I left that garden, the whole garden was covered with bonsai pots and trees. I got rid of all the bedding plants and all that. And bonsai became such an obsession that everything I did was connected with bonsai. Look at that same garden. Even my children were involved. All bonsai everywhere in the garden, that same garden. And I was even making my own ceramic pots and doing bonsai like that. And then in 1982, when still as an amateur, you see, I created a sensation because as an amateur, I won a gold medal in my first ever show in the Royal Horticultural Society's exhibition in October, which no amateur ever did. So I was the first ever amateur to win a gold medal in the first show. And that is the first show I put on. First ever show that I put on, I won the gold medal. And ever since that time, I always had a very big press coverage because bonsai was quite a unique thing. So I attracted a lot of press. So I've always had press coverage. Even today, I still get a lot of press coverage. So I was everywhere known for my bonsai. This picture was taken in 1984 when I met the Queen for the first time. Look at her hair. It's not white, it's brown. 1984, that's long back. And I was wearing that sweatshirt, I love bonsai. Usually when you meet the Queen, everyone is dressed in a proper suit. And that day, I was still preparing my stand. I didn't have time to go and change back in the suit. And maybe because of that, I attracted her attention. All these other officials were going to take her away somewhere else. So she turned to the left and said, that looks interesting. So when she said that looks interesting, those officials had no choice but to take her where she wanted to see. So I remember this president of RHS, this tall man, he said to her, we'll ask Mr. Chan to explain to you what bonsai is. So I had a conversation about 4 or 5 minutes with her. She asked very intelligent questions, what is this, what is that, how do you make this, how do you make that. So that was my first meeting with the Queen in 1984. And I was still a civil servant at that time as an amateur. And I met her several times since then. That's Duke of Edinburgh. He always used to make jokes. Some of the trees were quite old, 100 years old. He said, you must be joking, they can't be 100 years old. He was a very jovial character. So I met all the royalty over the years. And this is the last time I met the Queen, 2005 I met the Queen. So look at her hair. It turned silver by that time. Chelsea Flower Show. I used to get gold medals. I got 21 consecutive gold medals for showing at the biggest flower show in the world. But in 2006, I stopped doing it. I said, after 21, how many more do I want? I don't want any more. You have it. I stopped doing it in 2006. So after that time, I decided no more. I don't do the Chelsea Flower Show anymore. So that all it is really, after the first gold medal, all the other gold medals are paper. It's just a certificate. It's the prestige of winning it. And my wife has always been with me throughout the bonsai journey. This is still 1984. I was still an amateur. I was winning gold medals as an amateur. I had no desire to turn the bonsai into a business or profession at all. Absolutely no intention of turning. I said maybe when I reach 55, 56, I will ask for early retirement and then have a small little business for bonsai. But I never thought of turning it into bonsai. So this is what the Chelsea gold medal is. It's just a paper medal saying that you won the gold. And again, all this press coverage. I used to get press coverage by the score, dozens at a time, always in the press. So I had quite a reputation as a bonsai person. Now, why I show this diary is that in September 1985, on the 21st of September, there's a little entry there, saw herons, 11 a.m. I saw herons at my present property for the first time. And because by that time I was growing so much bonsai, my garden, which was 1/3 of an acre, which is quite a big garden, 1/3 acre is quite big. I had about 300 bonsai trees. I was running out of space to grow bonsai because you keep doing experiments, you need to experiment more and more trees. I was running out of space. So I was looking for more land to either rent or to buy, just to experiment with bonsai. And out of the blue, in the UK we get these free property papers, advertising property. I don't think you get it in India. Just a newspaper, just devoted to selling property, real estate. And I came across, my wife looked at this paper and said, hey, there's a house with 4.5 acres going with 5 greenhouses as well. 5 great greenhouses for growing plants in, and 4.5 acres. But the price was about 6 times the value of my present house, the house I was living then, 6 times the value. So she said, let's go and look, you're interested, that the land is interesting. So I went, maybe just to be inquisitive. I didn't have any idea to purchase it. But when we went there, the 4.5 acres was just like this, all rubble everywhere, in a terrible state. So although the price was 6 times the value of my house, it was still relatively cheap compared to its real value. See, all these greenhouses were very old, but the house was a modern house. See, those wooden houses, at that time in 1985 was already about 40 years old, built immediately after the war. In 1945 was built after the war. So the wooden houses were quite old, all the glass was falling out. Every time the wind blew, the glass used to fall. Look at it. Look at that. That is the state of the 5 greenhouses. Not exactly in good condition, was it? But you have to see the potential of that. I always like to think that people say, oh, you're very lucky. And in life, you sometimes are lucky, but I also believe that you have to play some part in that role. You, to a large extent, make your own luck. You just can't say it's kismet and that happened, but you have to make your own luck. Now that house with that free property paper, thousands of people would have seen it, seen the advertisement. Maybe 10 or 20 would have gone to look at it, but they didn't take the decision to buy it. I had to take the decision. I had to make your own luck. And that was the 21st I saw the property. I thought about it on the Sunday night, and then I went to my bank manager, 3 p.m. on the Monday morning, Mr. Bryce, the bank, and I spoke to one business advisor. And then the next day on Tuesday, the bank manager said, you write me a business plan and give it to me, and then we will see what will happen. And within 2 days, I got the loan, 6 times the loan of my mortgage on the previous house, which means a big step, big commitment, financial commitment. And in those days, the interest rate for loans was 15%, very big commitment. So although that property was there, I still had to take a tremendously, I would say, groundbreaking, step-changing life decision to buy that property. So I decided that I had to take a decision, and even in those days, that is always my philosophy in life. It is more important to find your soul than just drift through life. So what was happening in those days? See, that was the property I bought, and I think I mentioned briefly yesterday. I was working in the British Civil Service, and while working there in the 70s and 80s, there was still a lot of what we call racial discrimination. In the Department of Energy in those days, there were 1,500 people, and in the top management, that means the upper levels, not the top level, maybe 3 levels from the top, 3, 4 levels down from the top, there was only one West Indian person and myself, 2 ethnic people in that department. All the other ethnics were paper pusher, peons, pushing the trolley. So there was very little opportunity for ethnic people. Now, of course, Prime Minister of UK is a person of Indian origin, and all the ministers are Indian or Pakistani or whatever. So there's a lot of ethnicity. Its culture has changed now. But back in the 70s and 80s, unless you were from Oxford and Cambridge and you were white, you got no advancement anywhere. So I could see that, although writing speeches for ministers and doing all these useful jobs, why was I not getting promotion? So you question it in your mind. There must be some reason. I could see it. Other people could see it. So rather than bang your head against the wall, there's no point banging your head against a brick wall. If you come across a problem, try and overcome it. So you don't bang your head. You either climb over the wall or go around the wall. That is the way I always approach things. Don't just complain and moan about it. So I said, if I'm getting nowhere, let me change my career. Now, change of career is very important and very traumatizing event in life. Now, because I was not a businessman, I was always like a public servant, working for electric company and working for government. What experience did I have for business? I had common sense, so, and hard work. Common sense and hard work is what you need to start a business. No more than that. Hard work is very important. If you are not prepared to work hard, don't start your own business. You have to work hard. So with all these old tumble down facilities, I started putting a few bonsai out. Look at it. This is very primitive, really primitive. But what I want to say about this, for the first 3 years, I did 2 jobs. So I used to go up to London, travel, commute 1.5 hours each way. That means 3 hours of the day was taken commuting to London and then coming back. So in the summertime, I used to come home at about 8 o'clock, and then from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, I used to water the plants, do this, because my wife didn't have any clue about bonsai, because it was my expertise. And the odd customer that came to the nursery, she sold the odd plant, but she didn't know anything about the plant. She didn't know the difference between one plant and another. So for 3 years, I did 2 jobs. Can you imagine? 2 jobs, the bonsai job and my civil service job. So it was really tough. So when you start your own business, don't think everything is easy. You have to work hard. So that is what I was doing, 2 jobs to get it established. Okay, I'll show this picture. Now this same picture, you see that shed in the background, that is still there. But this building is now a new building, and we have completely new facilities. So we've been able to advance gradually just by sheer hard work. But when I started the business in 1986, I moved into that property. Shortly after that, after 18 months, there was, you see that date, 1988, that was the anniversary. That means 1 year after the storm. In 16 October 1987, that means about 18 months after I moved to my property, there was a hurricane, 150-mile-hour wind. And what happened to those old greenhouses? They completely collapsed, completely collapsed. See, all the trees fallen everywhere, all the greenhouses smashed, all smashed. So if you were faced with that situation, anyone else would say, "Arey Baba, what can I do? Let's quit." But I remember my wife standing next to me when I saw the greenhouses collapsing. I turned around and said to her, "This is the opportunity to start again." Because with all those greenhouses, I would never have thought of demolishing it. They were so big. Who would think of demolishing it? I was repairing them and trying to make use of the old greenhouses. But God did it for me. The divine intervention smashed everything. I had no choice but to start again. So I took out another small loan to build again. And then, of course, our local MP, who was also the Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, he encouraged me, my local MP helped me, he encouraged me to start, because the Conservative government is about private enterprise and all that. He could see that I was trying to make a go of starting my own business. So that is him inaugurating the new greenhouses. I spent some money and bought new greenhouses, and then I always had an eye for publicity, so invited Foreign Secretary, Japanese Ambassador, all these people to come to set up the new greenhouses. So this is what our nursery looks like today. So from sheer hard work, you know, growing plants, making a living from plants, I have this, and this is what my nursery looks like today. See, they are very beautiful. People come here because they are beautiful objects, but they are hard to sell. How many people will buy bonsai? You got to be very interested in to buy it. So as I say, it's a very, very niche market, and that makes it even more difficult to market that product. But you have to devise a way. You got to be the very best. You have to be the very best in that particular field to make a success. No second class measures. So that is what I set out to achieve. We used to go to Japan as well, my wife and I, we used to go. And this is a IIT alumni, but not from Kharagpur. A lot of them are Bombay, Kanpur and all that. So they come to our farm. We have a big alumni group in London. And I get involved in engineering in a roundabout way because I made a very big garden. See those big trees? They were for a big project for 300 apartments in London. Each of those apartments was selling £2 million each, 2-bedroom apartment, £2 million. And I made the garden for that complex. So I did get involved in engineering in a roundabout way. That is an alumni. He's a Kharagpur guy. He became very rich. I don't know what he does. I think his name is, I can't remember, I think it's a Kohli or something like that. But anyway, he lived nearby. So this is the sort of projects I made. So my artistic inclination and talent is spent in making Japanese gardens. So I'm a landscape architect in that respect. That was a very prestigious garden I made. And you know who that is? You recognize her? This was 2005 in Delhi. I think she died now, isn't it? So these are pictures of my Chelsea flower show. You see how beautiful it is, you know. This is my visit in 1995. I think I told some of you yesterday. I came to visit IIT in 95 with my daughter. And at that time, she was in her 4th year in Cambridge. She did a 4-year degree, double degree course in Cambridge. And she came to visit IIT. And because I used to write letters to my wife as a pen friend from room 228C, I showed her the room where I wrote the letters and told her that had I not written those letters from there, you would not be born, you know. So when I went to that room, fortunately the occupant was there. They sat me down at the same desk and made me write another letter to my then wife to remember old times. So that was a very sentimental visit to RK Hall in 1995. She's been to visit the campus twice. She came again in 2007. She thought very highly of the campus because she looked at the people more than the infrastructure. She could see that the people, you know, had some dum in them, some tempo in them. And she was the president of the Queen's College in her first year. That means like a Gymkhana president. She was president of Queen's College, which had 2,500 students in each college. So she knew what university life was like. I still spend time doing all sorts of things like Tai Chi or whatever. That's in my own garden. That's in my center. We have a center where we do all sorts of activities. I even compete in dance. I was telling you, to this very day, I still compete in dancing. And so I like living a complete life. This is what I call well-being, well-rounded life. See, in this, I compete in dance. See, this is in Blackpool. This is the most famous ballroom in UK. And now, of course, with digital media, this I think is a bit of luck. You know, digital media has boosted my popularity no end. So I have huge worldwide following on YouTube. If you go to Heron's Bonsai, this was taken in June, 402. So I now have like 500,000 subscribers and many, many views. So if you look at my YouTube channel, I have a massive following there. So my YouTube channel is the main thing. So I have a lot of feedback and I spend a lot of time doing that. So I'm very proud of what I have achieved on social media. Although I am not a tech savvy person, but somehow I've been able to adapt to the use of digital media in this day and age. I think you have to move with the times, and I'm blessed that I'm able to adapt to all these changes of situation. And now I spend a lot of my time on this thing like mental welfare, well-being and things like that, yesterday's talk, because as I said, I believe in a complete, full life. So all these books I have written, which have spread my reputation. And then I republished another book recently, so I continue to sell a lot of my books. They're very much in demand. And then the Royal Horticultural Society's gardens. We sponsor the collection there. Just those trees in that garden alone are worth about £250,000, so they're very valuable trees. So I give it for free, so people admire it in a public garden. So that is one social thing I do. So this is what bonsai look like. You know, some of them are big, some of them are small. So these are some big trees. Very, very maple, Japanese maple. That tree would be worth like £25,000. Give you some idea of the value. 25 lakh. So that is what I've been doing in my third career at Chelsea Flower Show. And of course, this I'm very proud of. 2015, Mali and Sundar Pichai getting the Distinguished Alumnus Award in the same year. But I don't think he attended that, because that very day he was made chief of Google. That very day, the day of the, I think that convocation was in August the 9th, if I remember, August 9th or 10th. So what have I learned from my bonsai journey? I found that more important to find your soul than just make money. You don't have to be a topper to be a success in life. Always remember that. When you get into IIT, you are very clever anyway. You don't have to be a topper. Always remember. And now, again, some words of advice. To be an entrepreneur, not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. But whatever you do, some people will make mistakes. So why people become entrepreneurs? They want to be their own boss. They want to exploit your ideas. I think with the knowledge and opportunity you have, you can easily start off as an entrepreneur. I think gone are the days when you had to be in a rich family like the Birlas and Sri Rams to make good, but now with all this digital stuff, anyone can start their own business. It's so much easier now. So you don't have any excuse. So I said, you need a bit of luck in life, but you also have to make your own luck. Nothing happens by chance or fate. You create your own fate and by your actions. That is what I believe karma should be about, you know. So I have certain philosophies in life, and that is one of them. And again, in YouTube, I always teach these principles. You got to be bold. You got to bite a bullet. That you got to take a decision. There's no good not taking a decision. You have to take decision in life. And every problem has several solutions. And then the person who says it can't be done shouldn't interrupt the person who is doing it. You know, a lot of people, they say, oh, it can't be done, you know, forget it. That is the wrong attitude in life. So to be successful, you have to have a positive. So some, again, are the things that I believe in. Don't bang your head against a brick wall. If you come against a wall, go around it or climb over it. And then learn from your mistakes. No shame in failing. Failure can be a stepping stone to success. Don't worry if you mess things up. Enjoy the experience and put it down to experience. You know, a lot of people have failure. They said, oh, Are Baba, what have I done, you know. That's the wrong attitude. That is a valuable experience, very valuable experience in life, to learn from mistakes. Always better to take action and gain experience than to be inactive, to do nothing, and that's the worst thing you can do. And last of all, I believe that you have to be kind and considerate in all you do, and it will come back to you in full measure. So that is what I believe. I remember, I think, your director, only this year, I noticed in one of the newsletters, he quoted this, isn't it? 3 things are necessary to make every man great: conviction of the power of goodness, absence of jealousy and suspicion, and helping all those who are trying to be good and do good. So I found that very, encouraging words from your director. So on that note, I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. I hope you will get a wider audience if this is shown on YouTube or whatever. So this is what I have done and continue to do. I'm 82 years of age, and I keep doing it, and by God's grace, if I have many more years to give, I will continue to give that. So I hope you have success in your careers and enjoy your life. Okay, so with that, I will say thank you. If you want to ask any questions afterwards, do come up and ask me. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Peter, it's a great that at the age of 82 years, and your messages to us are very useful, very useful. But when you are managing these plants, means pruning the roots, and then making the architecture of the branches, how did you get this idea? And then, because the roots are pruned, you must be putting soil.
Yeah.
Then how much water should be given?
This is all by experimentation. As I said, a lot of my books which I've written are the results of the experiments I did. I believe that if you have an inquiring mind, I was interested in plants. I told you even in alcohol I was growing plants. I've always as a boy been interested in plants. But as they say, growing plants is not rocket science. To be a Mali, you don't need great intellect. It's just empirical knowledge that you have. And if you apply the empirical knowledge, you can devise and find out the answers so easily, It is only the artistic side that makes a difference. So you can develop that by looking at pictures, So if you have an intention to do something, you can always find the information and knowledge. But I help to spread that knowledge and create the knowledge, because that knowledge was not widely available. Now, of course, with books and digital media, it is widely available. But in my days, when I was doing it in the late 1960s and 1970s, there was no knowledge of those things. So I'm very proud to have to be able to contribute to that fund of knowledge that exists.
Each plants have got its own characteristics.
Yes, yeah, different species have. Yeah, different plants require different conditions, so you get to know from empirical knowledge, experience, what plants like, how do I find the material to fill those books, you have to say something about it. So all this knowledge you can pass on.
How you are, because you kept this plant in a porcelain which is very hard, so how you are able to prune the roots?
Yeah, you take it out. I haven't shown it in this. Yeah, you take it out of the pot, cut the roots, and then put new soil. Yeah.
There are so many plants, then how do you give the watering actually?
We do it by hand. Yeah, on our nursery, we have more than 20,000 plants. So that's all done by hand. This year, I think people always talk about climate change. We were talking earlier about climate change. We had the hottest summer in living memory on record. We had temperature in the UK 34 degrees, which is very, very hot. Usually in English summer, if you go to England, the highest temperature you used to get was in the mid-20s, 25, 26 was the highest summer temperature. This year we had many days 34 degrees, and I only have like 7 full-time and 3 part-time employees. 3 men were devoted to watering the plants from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening with a hose pipe watering the plants. I don't believe in automatic sprinkler system because that's very wasteful. It spreads everywhere else except the pond. So they have to water each plant with a hose pipe. So that takes a lot of resources, a lot of time. So nothing in life is easy. Nothing in life is easy. When you see all this beautiful garden, you think it is easy. It's not. I missed showing you. There was some, I think in another program there's a aerial view done with a drone of the nursery. I wish I had shown it in the slide, maybe in another slide. We have 8 acres, a very beautiful land. We have a huge land, and it adjoins my property, enjoys it next to a 10-acre lake, so the air quality is very good. It's a nice place to be. If ever you get the opportunity to visit England, do come and visit us there.
So you mentioned that it's important to find our souls instead of making money.
Yeah.
So what ways would you suggest to find what we actually want in life, or what do we actually want to pursue next?
Well, at some point in your life, you have to step back and ask yourself, is money the only object in life? You got to ask it. Not everyone is able to do that. Some people don't have a conscience. I believe it's important to have that balance where you have a conscience, where making money is not the sole object in life. What can you do? At the end of the day, if you made so much money, you still have to die. You may have several houses, several cars, but what will people remember you for? It's more important that that person remembers you, that you have done some good for some person. I look at like some of you who are staff in IIT and teachers. I'm sure your students will remember you because you taught them something good, They will bless you for it. You didn't earn a lot of money, but you've done something good, You've done something good in life. So you look at each of those aspects in that way, you will find some fulfillment in life. I think it's important to have a philosophy in life, not just drift through life thinking about the material things. There's some, I don't like to use religion, some spirituality element in one's life. I'm glad you asked that question. Okay.
Should I put it in the form? Each plant has its own way to grow.
Yes.
And we are forcing them to come in the unnatural form because it has got its lateral root.
I know.
Deeper.
Yeah, some people always argue.
We are forcing them to put it in a smaller thing. So
But you grow a lot of plants in pots. You grow a lot of plants. You see, all these things are grown in pots. Why are you growing it in a pot? You can argue like that. The common argument is that bonsai is cruel to plants. You may have heard of the argument. You're constantly clipping. When you grow your plants in the garden, you're always clipping the plant, aren't you? In this country, you don't mow the grass that much. When you mow the grass, you're cutting off the tops of the heads, Why are you doing that? If you're vegetarian, you're killing the vegetables, you're eating vegetables. So you're killing plants. So if you look at it logically like that, there is no logical explanation as to why you're doing certain things to plants. That is our usual answer to it. Yes?
Thank you for such an inspiration life story. I'm just trying to imagine how you maneuvered changing career 3 times. You find at times most people have that fear of unknown. And
It is.
yeah, at some point you are in a civil servant, in the civil service, which is an assurity of
Yeah.
a stable.
Yeah.
Like
I think there are several factors. If you analyze it, there must be several factors. Either you become disillusioned with the career. In my case, it was that. I found that I was getting nowhere, How could I spend the rest of my life in the same job? No promotion, nothing. So you get disillusioned. So if you get disillusioned, that is an incentive to change your career. And you got to do something about that. And you say about the fear, it is very frightening. Because when I changed my career, I was only 45 and my children were like 10 and 12 years old. I still had to support them. You chuck up a safe civil service job. The expression is, government job is an iron rice bowl. The Chinese have that expression, iron rice bowl. That means the iron rice bowl will never break. You got job for life. So same with that, why would you give up a safe job to do something risky? But if you want to get a fulfilling life, you have to take some risk. There is some risk involved. And there is fear. There's no doubt about it. But you got to do something. Nothing comes for nothing. If you want to gain something, you don't get it by doing nothing. You have to sacrifice something. Yes?
When you initiated this business, you must have faced many ups and downs,
Oh, yes.
like extinction of money and all. How did you manage all this?
Well, I told you I had to take out a mortgage 6 times my existing mortgage. So that was very difficult. I could have gone bust at any time. In those days, 1986 to the early 90s, because the interest rate was so high, the number of business startups, 70% of new businesses failed within the first 2 years. 70% failed. So there was a risk. There is a risk. All business is about risk. If there's no risk, everyone would be doing it. So you have got to expect the risk. Then you start again. You may try to start again. So there is risk involved. To give you the idea that everything is easy is not the right impression to give. Always there is a risk. And as for problems, I showed you that picture. 18 months after going there was that big hurricane where all the infrastructure of my nursery was demolished. I had to start again. But you don't just see it as a setback. I saw it as an opportunity to start again, because those old infrastructure, I never thought of demolishing it because they were there already. But because there was this storm, I had to start again. So that was a setback. There are always setbacks. You always see it as a way of overcoming a problem. Don't be afraid of problem. You have to overcome the problem. That is what business is about. Right through life there is problem.
So are there any set of rules that determine the decision that you take in any point of life? Or are there any factors which should be taken in account while taking a decision, like what to do, what not to do in a case, if there is no evident solution to it?
I think you got to be more specific. Like that storm, it demolished my greenhouses and infrastructure. I had no choice. You had to build again. Either quit or build from scratch. Take out a loan and start from scratch. You have to take that decision.
Like, I was basically asking what kind of motivations at points do things provide you?
To be successful, you can't fail. If I'm that sort of person. I don't see failure like that. Even if it is apparent failure, it is opportunity to learn from that. It is a stepping stone. Don't look at failure as an end point. All failure is just a stepping stone to success. It's just the next level to making a success. Look at it in that way. Problems are always stepping stones to success. Don't look at it as in a negative way. Look at it in a positive way. Sometimes it's useful to have a mentor, but I don't think I had many mentors. In fact, a lot of my colleagues who were already into bonsai, they told me when I started my business, there were 2 other companies which were very big in bonsai. They said, you'll get swallowed up by them. They will eat you up. But within 5 or 6 years, they all went bust. They went out of business. And I'm now number 1. So don't worry, if you set your heart right and you do it right, you will succeed. Yes?
So you must have followed the 10,000 hour rule.
Like what?
Like Malcolm Gladwell said that if there's a certain level of determination, certain level of perseverance, and it gets kind of
Yes.
stretched towards the 10,000 hour kind of thing, it becomes a habit.
Yes.
That leads to like.
Of course, obviously. Yeah.
So you must have done some calculations, some mathematical.
No. I think it's more gut feeling. If you set your mind to it, you will. There's no point taking a calculation. A lot of the successful entrepreneurs are not people with MBAs or degrees. I know one very successful businessman who is one of my customers. He left school at the age of 16 and he made a successful life, big businessman. And in fact, a lot of people who I've met, they've said to me that a university degree can sometimes be a hindrance, I think to be success at the end of the day, it is only a small asset. At the end of the day, you have to take the decision. You have to use your gut feeling in determining how you proceed in life. All right, okay. Yes?
So you have seen lots of ups and downs.
Yes.
There is a point you said everything is finished and you have to start from the scratch.
Yeah.
At that point where you are saying that everything is, what was in your mind? What was the feeling at that time?
Well, all right. I think even Professor Tiwari yesterday, I don't know where you attended the opening session yesterday. I don't know whether you know, when I came on my journey, my 2 pieces of luggage, 30 kilograms of them, was lost in transit. I still haven't got it today. It is lost in Bombay. It didn't leave London. So I'm without any clothes. There's the only clothes I'm wearing. So that is a setback. A typical example of a setback. It's no good trying, because 3 other passengers on that flight also lost their luggage. One guy was literally crying, you know. He was crying. He said, "Oh, Baba, what do I can do, you know?" So what can you do if you moan and groan? You can't make that luggage come back. You just accept it, you know, go through the procedures and hope for the best. There's no good being negative about it. Just hope for the best, and hopefully you can overcome problems like that. All little problems like that, you got to have a mindset where you look at it in a positive way. I know it's difficult at the time, but that is the way to approach it. Yes? I think you have to develop it, you know, say to yourself, keep saying to yourself that that is the way to do it, you know. I don't, it may be in the gut feeling, or maybe I'm not expressing it. I don't think there is a magic formula. That means you do 1, 2, 3, it'll come. No, just be positive. Just set your mind being positive in whatever you do. If you come across a problem, say to yourself, that is not a problem. You can overcome it. Just keep saying to yourself that you can overcome it, you know, not to be negative. I think it can be developed. You're still young, you can develop it. All right, I hope I've enthused you. Pardon? How do you mean?
Do you always trust in your gut feeling?
To be honest, I have made wrong decisions. One of my biggest faults, my wife used to tell me that I'm too kind for your own good. That means I'm always trying to please people too much. She says sometimes that can be bad. You know, if you try to please too many people all the time, I'm trying to always oblige them by doing this and that, when sometimes I don't. And sometimes people can take advantage of that. So I found that sometimes that has been a bad thing. But on balance, I rather live my life like that than to be negative all the time. You know, there will be some people who take advantage of you, but thankfully that sort of person is in the minority. So I would say that is one of the things that I've noticed is my weakness, being too kind, never knowing how to say no to people. I don't know how to say no. And I've also found that my wife passed away 5.5 years back. But I find that taking the advice of your spouse, the partner, is very important. And I don't like to be sexist, but for men, a woman's intuition is very important. A woman has a different way of looking at things which can help you. Do you not agree, sir? You know, they always have some instinct that a man does not have. And that I have learned to acknowledge in my life, that they are sometimes more right than you are. So don't be too proud to accept that a woman can teach you certain things.
I have a question, sir. I feel regret some on my decisions because of I got in 2015 some opportunity to directly integrate some IIT, that left that opportunity, and due to my passions of thermal power plant, when I was working, so I did my PhD. Again, I was working, and I left my job and joined PhD. It was a lucrative salary, but I also sometimes feel regret because I feel insecure at this moment because I'm at the age of 29, so started my second year of PhD. And sometimes I feel upset while the problem can't be solved at this moment. So how do you tackle it? Is it worthy or not? So doing regret, because sometimes I feel regret, and that sometimes deteriorate my performance also at that time.
Again, in the IIT system, are there mentors on the campus?
Yes,
There are. I think you should seek the advice of mentors. You know, that support system should be there.
I know in UG there is a very structured way of mentoring, but about PG I don't know.
No, we are communicating for PG also the initiative led by Students Alumni Mentorship Program. We are accommodating UG, PG, RS all students from this year.
Is it based on request or you are mapping irrespective of somebody requesting you?
No, like we are opening the form for all the students.
Opening the form, okay. So you have to enroll there. If you are looking for some kind of mentorship guidance, so that way we are mapping with the alumni and trying to get their help. And also while mapping we are putting some intelligence to find out who are in related kind of field who can guide you.
Integrity is okay, sir. Sometimes
I'm sure, because I'm not familiar with your system, but it's nice to know that there is some sort of system
Yes,
there.
it is a-
No,
Yeah.
as you told that you left your civil servant job,
Ah.
then you shifted to different zone. It's really very uncertain and at that moment. And
No,
it's really, so
it may
degree is
not
good,
sound so easy. You don't think that it is just luck. I told you as an amateur, I was already winning lot of awards. Did you remember that? When I was an amateur, before I gave up my job, I was already very successful. I get already a very big reputation. I had a lot of press publicity. So I was already famous in bonsai before I changed my job. So when I took the decision, it was a calculated risk. I knew the bank manager wouldn't have given me the loan had he not seen my character or my track record. He could see that I had the potential. See, I won all those gold medals as an amateur. As an amateur I was winning. So to make the transition from amateur to professional was not that a big step. So you got to bear all those things in mind as well.
Yeah, first of these things, you know, you should feel that you are in IIT. That itself is a positive feeling. It should be there inside. You are in IIT, that itself you should keep in your
Exactly.
mind. You have whatever decision you are taking, since you are in IIT, you will getting success if you are change your things. That should be there. And that is what Peter could able to get continuously, you know, 21 consecutive, you know, gold medals. So those are the things. If that feeling is there, it will.
Yeah. I'm sure there are opportunities either to further in teaching or to research and all. You know, the end is not a blank wall. There's so many openings. I'm sure there are openings.
Correct. Now,
Oh,
when you were there and now it's a vast opening.
I know, a vast opening. Yes. Yeah. Be positive. Be positive. That's all I say.
Yes, sir.
Don't be negative. All right. Okay, guys. I could go on and on. I love interacting with you.
Thank you, sir, for your.
Okay.
Thank you. It's a great message to all of us.
This is my own garden. Actually, I have grown